Hello there. Hi, and welcome to the Global AI Bootcamp. This is the session on chatbots using Azure AI. My name is Liji Thomas. I'm a manager in the modern app dev space at Velorum Reply. And I'm happy to be here and happy to host you for this session. So thank you for stopping by. A quick word of thanks to our sponsors who've been extremely supportive and generous of this to make this event a huge success. So thank you to all our sponsors for supporting us. This is the agenda for the day. We'll be covering shortly the history of conversational AI. And before we look at the conversational AI landscape and dive into what Microsoft has to offer along the conversational AI stack, specifically around Azure Bot Service and Bot Framework and Azure Cognitive Services, before we finally open it up for Q&A. So let's get started. All right. So conversational AI is a much discussed topic in our recent times, especially with the recent outbreak of COVID-19. Companies are accelerating their digital transformation strategies in response to the pandemic. So they're looking for new ways to respond to the customer needs, also as an opportunity to sort of differentiate themselves from the competitors in a new channel. Conversational AI is a key component of this digital transformation. So right from the World Health Organization to companies with remote workforces, we see them increasingly deploying chatbots to respond to user queries. So it enables organizations to, manage a fast-moving landscape, and beyond automating human interactions for greater efficiencies, it provides the flexibility, the scalability, and the intelligence required for sustained growth. So as enterprises try to reimagine what their company will sort of look like in a digitally transformed world, this ability to communicate in a very meaningful, intelligent manner with customers will make a great difference. So during the pandemic, a lot of companies have had significant pressure from their customers. Many centers were closed down because of lockdown restrictions, and it dramatically affected their customer experience. So it's rather clear that COVID-19 or the pandemic will result in a huge change in the way we work and live globally. So today we are looking to better understand the opportunities that conversational AI will bring us and how we can seize that to sort of embrace the new normal. So let's take a look at the story thus far. Microsoft over the years has made substantial investment in the conversational AI space. But before we dive into technology, let's take a step back to look at the context here. This is pretty familiar for us. We've especially in our industry, we've been through a lot of changes in the past couple of decades, moving from the PC era to the internet era to the mobile era, and now we have the AI era or the conversation or the industry 4.0 and annotated with those buzzwords. But if you take a zoom into that last block there, artificial intelligence itself is a very broad term. So in fact, there are various approaches to AI. For those of us who come from a Microsoft background, we know that probably the earliest used was Microsoft Word had an office assistant called Clippy, if you remember. It didn't have a very successful career, but probably an idea ahead of its time. So from Clippy to IBM's Deep Blue, earliest forms of AI had developers write rules. So beyond a certain point, now these rule sets cannot be scaled. So that's where machine learning comes. So it's a fundamentally different paradigm, in which developers sort of feed the system with data and examples to learn from. So now machines are, identifying patterns without us having to hard code rule sets. So machine learning, as it's visible from the screen, is just one way of going about AI. It's not the only way we can go about AI. It's the subset of AI, so to speak. Again, of the different machine learning algorithms, the One that's most applicable to AI is probably deep learning or neural networks, where you have a lot of more data leads to more complex networks, etc. So we'd probably not be discussing the details of each of this, but I'd like to invite your attention to the timeline below. It's interesting because looks like the first forms of AI date back to 1950. So then why is it that we've just started talking about it just recently in the last couple of years? So the fundamental principles of AI, if it has originated way back in the 1950s, something's changed in the last half century to make them relevant right now. And as we answer that question, there is an important thing that we should seek to understand why AI programming is rather different from traditional programming. So there are various ways in which we can explain this. Perhaps the simplest way to understand that is to say that it is about teaching machines and not instructing machines. So to teach someone something is an entirely different game plan. So let's look at what we need to teach machines. First up, we need data, and we need loads of data. So this kind of data was not available, obviously, during those days. Next, we needed the computing power. And obviously, we did not have that level of computing power as we have right now, decades ago. And in addition to data and computing power, we needed really powerful algorithms to be able to make use of that data and that computing power and be able to deliver results. So if we recollect the timeline in the previous slide, unfortunately from the 1950s till a few years back, we lacked these capabilities. So that resulted in what experts call an AI winter. Now for AI to advance, we needed the following capabilities. Now we can sort of connect the dots here and understand what really has led to these changes in the last couple of years. So if you kind of think about it, there have been certain breakthroughs that have been enabling AI. So first up, we have big data. So it's not just about generating more data. Of course, we're generating more data than ever before. But more importantly, we now have the provision to store or to retain this generated data. So this helps the models to feed on such data. Cloud computing, the rise of cloud, clubbed with increased GPU, we now have computing power required to run complex AI models. And last but not least, we have those powerful algorithms. So advancements in ML algorithms, machine learning algorithms in recent past, together with the fact that we have big data and computing power, has eventually helped us to cross the AI winter. So why we're discussing this is because the evolution of chatbots is almost going down the same route. So if you care to look at it, starting from the 1980s, we had the desktops and we had the PCs, and then we had the internet era, and that's where you have the browsers, web browsers, so the websites. And the 2000s, we had the mobile era, so people were downloading smartphones and instead of using their websites. And then we have from the smartphones, we came to the wearables and the IoT. So as digital artifacts started getting smaller, the computing power, as we've seen in the previous slides, started getting bigger. Now, mobile apps and the data-heavy activities do not go hand in hand. So people do not want to be looking through complicated menus all the time. It's not fast enough. The user experience is not seamless. So consumers are no longer happy to be restricted by communication methods. They want to interface with technology in a very natural way across a number of channels. So chatbots offer a way to solve these issues. So it allows the customers to simply ask for whatever they need and across multiple channels. So before we even go down that route, let's take a step back and ask ourselves, so what is a chatbot really? You would have heard a lot of glossy names doing the rounds, from conversational AI bot, intelligent virtual assistant, conversational agents, virtual agents, conversational interfaces, etc. So all the jargons apart, honestly, a chatbot is nothing but another computer program. It allows humans to interact with technology, just uses a variety of input methods. You can use voice, use text, and it's just known by different names. Now, chatbots are definitely growing in popularity. They have all these different names. But what can a chatbot do? A chatbot can do a variety of things. It depends on the nature of the chatbot. So you can use a chatbot to do something as simple as just answering questions, frequently asked questions or FAQs. Advanced chatbots have got the intelligence and the capability to sort of deliver very sophisticated experiences. So you can set your alarm, you can use it to book your dentist appointment, to set up a dinner reservation. It depends. So the use case of your chatbot depends on your domain and what your business ask is. So why chatbots? Or why are people actually aligned to chatbots? Now, this is the most interesting question. Obviously, as we discussed, it feels less like using a computer, and it feels more like dealing with a person. You feel very natural when you use a chatbot. The fact that it's available 24/7, so customers want quick service 24/7, 365. They want to message you a question, even they might be waiting in line for a coffee. They might be driving to work. They want to be able to use all devices around them, and so customers are happy to be able to talk to a chatbot that's available at their convenience and over a number of different channels. So there are no staffed hours for a chatbot. And then, of course, you have immediate responses for a chatbot, and 75% of the customers now expect services within the first 5 minutes of making contact online. And enterprise chatbots allow enterprises to meet their demand. So there's immediate response to their query. Of course, reduced costs. The initial investment in setting up a chatbot, though it's high, the return of investment will definitely justify those costs. It will help you reach new channels, so you don't have to open your offices in new locations or geographies. You don't have to scale your teams exponentially. You can use chatbots to scale up to any channel or medium that you think your customers are. So, for example, if you think that a lot of your audience is available on Facebook, you can use a chatbot to tap into that channel. Increased engagement. So obviously, when engaged customers purchase more frequently, it leads to more return purchases and more joyful experiences for the user. So that's with the increased engagement, and that's with the why of the chatbots. So here's a quick recap of what we saw as we, it's just solidifying our findings thus far that Alexa and Siri are perhaps not the first chatbots that did exist. We did have Eliza, Parry, Jabberwocky, Alice dating very back. And the current trends or the industry predictions also show that this is the future. So chatbots have evolved a lot, and chatbots, though they can trace their history back for decades, it wasn't until the internet usage that it became more mainstream. But chatbots are recognized today, and it does have a very solid future going forward. For example, one of the statistics say that 95% of customer interactions will be powered by AI chatbots by 2025. So that's interesting because if you look at the global chatbot market today, there's been a lot of traction and the segmentation across multiple areas. So you have across different types of platforms and markets and various verticals, various end user segments. I mean, small and medium scale enterprises, large enterprises, be it on-prem, be it on cloud, software, services, products. I mean, even verticals, you have it across governments, education, utilities, BFSI, travel and hospitality, healthcare, etc. So you see that chatbot markets are going across the various industries and be very successfully making a part of the businesses and very high demand technology. And it's also interesting to know that there are actually very interesting or innovative chatbot scenarios as well, in addition to customer service. So if you're curious, for example, there's a chatbot called Rose Intelligence. So that's interesting because it's an AI lawyer bot. So it helps human lawyers research faster. You can imagine the amount of data that a bot actually looks into, and it comes back with the quick, accurate answers, and it helps the lawyers present their cases to the clients better. We have Tara, which is an AI recruiter bot. So it stands for talent acquisition and recruiting automation. So it takes into account several data points of a candidate and ideally matches the employee profile to the job description. So it helps in recruitment. Wobot is a talk therapy bot. So this bot has been built based on the principles of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's one of the most heavily used clinical approaches to treating depression. So Wobot helps patients in that area. So this kind of comes to the end of the first section, but let's wrap up the first section by debunking some chatbot myths that we probably had coming into this section. So first up, we have chatbots are a new technology. If we thought that chatbots were a new technology and it's something that just came up a couple of years back, the truth is that this technology is relevant, it's developing, but it's definitely not new. Chatbots can only support customer service? Not exactly. So we did see a lot of innovative use cases for chatbots, and it's definitely beyond customer service. All bots use AI? Not exactly. So we have bots that are very rule-based, very scripted, and there are bots that are AI-based that will learn and that will perform. There's a slightly controversial article on chatbots versus humans, wherein chatbots are touted to sort of replace humans by taking on all their jobs and replacing humans in the industry, which is not perhaps completely true, because chatbots and humans can work together. We've seen a lot of industry use cases wherein the chatbots would, probably take the first 40% of the queries, even in a customer service scenario. So what it does is it essentially frees up the human to do far more creative tasks, and the human can really focus on tasks that will add more value to the customer, while the chatbots handle the first line of queries. And lastly, the chatbots are difficult to build as a myth that we sort of hear. And so I will take a pause at that, and I will let you answer that question, because in the coming sections, we're going to see how difficult or how easy it is to actually build chatbots. So it's both true and false. So let's see what that is. Having said that, we are moving on to finding what Microsoft has in this realm. So we've seen the evolution of AI and the conversational AI space, the conversational AI landscape, the market, and let's see now what Microsoft has to offer. So in the prophetic words of Satya Nadella, who said this in a couple of years back at a Build conference, human language is the new UI layer, and bots are like the new applications. How true? Because since then, we've seen the AI landscape, change across for all companies, all the major players in the market. Nearly every large company has an AI and a bot strategy. So if you care to note the visual on the right, which shows the Gartner Magic Quadrant for 2020, it shows the leaders in the space of this space, and it shows Amazon and Microsoft and Google and IBM all in that leader space. And it's very encouraging to see the major players in the market provide these kind of innovations, because the fact that the giants are in the bot ecosystem means that they will provide platforms to develop bots. So they will provide the kind of support that the developer community might need to create bots. So that was the leaders in the space. So let's take a look at what the bot development lifecycle looks like. So for those of us who come from a developer background, we would be familiar with SDLC, which is Software Development Lifecycle. What we have here is what's called the bot development lifecycle, which is not very different. This is essentially what a good chatbot platform should provide to the enterprises or to the users. So a chatbot platform allows enterprises to plan, build, test, publish, connect, evaluate bots. So platforms can contain everything that a developer needs to build a conversational system. It can have excuse me, several data mining tools and several tools to create, to plan, to build, and to connect and to evaluate your chatbot. So this is essentially what enterprises will do. It will help build advanced conversational applications using these platforms. Now, for Microsoft, essentially that means that it is all based on the Azure AI Platform. So we have the Azure AI Platform segmented into three basic blocks, which is the Azure AI Services, Azure Infrastructure, and then we have tools. Under Azure Infrastructure, if you remember from the previous slides, we had talked about advanced computing power, which is made available through Azure Infrastructure. Now we have CPU, FPGA, GPU capabilities. We have AI services, pre-built AI services, custom AI services, and conversational AI services. And on the tool side, this is the environments that are available for the developer community, which includes your IDEs, your frameworks, SDKs, etc. So for the sake of this section, we would be focusing mainly on the cognitive services and bot service, essentially, which is revolving around conversational AI. So let's take a look at Azure Bot Service. So this is the crux of the presentation. So Azure Bot Service, as we discussed, provides an integrated environment that is purpose-built for bot development. This is solely for bot development. And using an open source SDK, with the bot SDK and tools that are available, developers can now build, they can test, you can publish your bot to Azure. So the entire bot service provides, it's a platform as a service that provides capabilities to manage, you can connect and you can deploy your bot across these multiple channels that you see on the right side. So you have a couple of these channels available out of the box. So that's Teams, Skype, Cake, Cortana, email, Slack, Line, etc. So before we delve a lot into the theory, I'd love to show you a demo of how to create one from Azure Bot Service, or rather let's see what it takes to get something to the Azure Bot Service. So I will shift my screen to the Visual Studio IDE. So what you are seeing is the Visual Studio 2019 IDE, and I'm gonna just go to File, New, Project. Now, just like we have our typical project templates, what I've done is I've downloaded a couple of bot templates that are available for download from the Microsoft site. And so if you can note, one of those templates that I have is the EcoBot template. There are a couple of templates that are available. For today, I will just use the EcoBot template and I will just create a new solution. What this would do is create a bot for me, and I'll show you how easy it is to actually create that. So in my Solution Explorer, I have the bot that's created. I'll just go ahead and just rebuild that solution. And without any code change, let's just run this bot to see what you get out of the box. Typically what we start with is a hello world solution. So let's see if you run that bot. This is basically an ASP.NET Core application. And if you run that, you see that it is running in your localhost 3978, and you should be having your bot up and running this side. So there you have it. So EcoBot is running. So which means that this is the endpoint at which your bot messages will be available. So what is left for you to do, if you want to take a look at the visual on the right, this is the exact bot development lifecycle that we discussed a while back. So this we started with a plan. So for planning phase, you can refer to a couple of design guidelines that are available from Microsoft or from Azure. From build, this is there are two ways in which you can build a bot. You can start with your IDE. You can build a bot as we just did right now, and you can have that published to Azure, or you can go from the Azure route, which we will also see in a short while, and you can build a bot from the Azure side and download the source code to your IDE and work from there. So there are just two parallel routes that you can take based on your preference. So now that I have a bot, I'd love to be able to test this. So for testing, what they recommend is you can test using emulator, or you can test online using the web chat, which means that if I go back to my IDE, now we will not delve a lot into the source code. So it's just following .NET Core application structure, but I want to show you the bot emulator here. Now, this is another standalone tool that I got to download, and what this emulator does is it's a tool that helps you test your bot locally on your machine. So a typical development lifecycle would involve a bot emulator. So now that my bot is running on localhost, I'm just going to connect to that bot URL, and I'm just going to hit connect. So that way I can interact with my bot. Now, if you remember, this is an echo bot. So all that it does is it will just echo back whatever I say. If I say hi, it will say hi. And I say hello, it says hello. And I know not super useful there, but you get the idea. So if you go back to my IDE, so this is essentially all that is in the source code. I mean, you can work with your team to sort of work around your specific business case and add all the logic that you need. You can iteratively test your bot on your local machines, and when you're happy with what you've created, you can publish this to Azure. So that's using the publish profile, or you can set up your CI/CD pipelines and you can publish that to Azure, and the bot is then publicly available in an endpoint. So that's the story of how this sort of works. And if I can go back to my PowerPoint presentation there. So we will go down the other route and show you how the Azure Bot Service also works. So what we saw right now was just an eco bot, and we saw how easy it is to create a bot that's just functional, and how you can test the bot and how you can interact with the bot on your local machine. But as we saw, there ought to be more to a bot than just that. In fact, the success for any bot is the ability to be counted as intelligent, and to be able to add a human side or a human-like intelligent capability to a bot. There's an entirely different area that's called cognitive services, and we're just going to talk a bit about that. So essentially, what makes us humans intelligent is our capabilities around these spectrums, which is decision making, speech, our language, our vision capabilities, and our search capabilities. And Microsoft, having identified this concept, has actually created a lot of APIs, pre-trained AI-based APIs around these areas. So for language, it is important to be able to translate text, to analyze text, to understand text. For search, for vision, speech, decision. For each of these areas, there are a lot of APIs that are available, and this is what is called cognitive services. So just so you appreciate the value of these cognitive services, a little bit of the history of that as well. These cognitive services were actually created by Microsoft research team, which is across the globe. So after decades of research, which Microsoft has been, in fact, internally using within their own products. So what we experience in Bing or O365 or Xbox today is really these APIs, these cognitive service APIs. And those APIs are now actually being seen in a lot of next generation Microsoft applications. So if you see the design ideas when you are creating a PowerPoint or an Excel or in Word document, if you see auto suggestions, those are all powered by these AI capabilities. So what they've done is these AI services, they've taken it out and they've made it now available to developers. So if you want to create a bot that is very human-like, like Wall-E, you have a capability today in terms of cognitive services, which is the easiest way to integrate AI into your applications. Cognitive services are probably not used just for bots, but it is a great application. Bots are a great application because intelligence is one of the core tenets of a bot. So that said, as we discussed, there are 5 major areas that cognitive services work in. So there's vision, there's speech, language, decision, there's search, and for each of these areas, there's like a ton of APIs for each of these sections. For the sake of time and brevity, we will be looking into just 2 of these cognitive services, which is Q&A Maker and LUIS, or Language Understanding Intelligence Service. So let's take a look. Now, imagine we are creating a bot for this specific bootcamp for our conference here. And a user would come to the bot and ask, when is the bootcamp happening? And the bot should be responding 16 January 2021. Sounds simple, right? But the problem is 10 different users would ask that in 10 different ways. So the way you ask is not the way I would ask, is not the way someone else would ask. And the bot would need to comprehend and sort of map all of this to that very same answer. I mean, irrespective of however that question was asked, the bot would be required to answer with 16 January 2021. So we need a service that is capable enough of not just having questions and answers stored, but also be able to take a variety of such alternatives so that a certain degree of natural language understanding should also be available. So that's where Q&A Maker comes into play. So if you go to the service called qamaker.ai, which is a standalone service, you can browse. And if you go there, you would be able to add Q&A pairs, and you would be able to configure these alternatives as well. I can quickly show you that Q&A Maker there. So this is the Q&A Maker. For a larger screen, I've just put my browser in full screen. So this is what the Q&A Maker looks like. I'm in qamaker.ai. And here you can have the capabilities to add Q&A pairs. I've added a Q&A pair. I've also added variations like we saw in the PowerPoint deck, and we can add additional variations here. We can add the answer to this. So irrespective of however this is being asked, this will be answered in such a fashion. And once it's these Q&A pairs have been set up, what you can do is you can save, you can train it, you can test it. There's a test panel within this itself. And when you're happy with all the Q&A pairs that you've added, you can publish it. So essentially what that does is it exposes a REST endpoint. So it's just like any other API endpoint. You can consume it within the source code that we saw a while back. You can call that within your application, the Q&A endpoint. And that through that API endpoint, you can make available these question answer pairs. So to complete that cycle, let me tell you the full story here. So what you would do is, or what I've done rather, is I've created a bot that consumes this API, and I've also published it to Azure using my published profile. So eventually what happens is, so this is my portal. This is my Azure portal, if you can see that. And within my Azure portal, I have a lot of options here. So when I publish the bot to my Azure portal, I get this web app bot here. There are a lot of sections here where you can, as you can see, you can test in the web chat. For example, just as you can test it within the bot emulator locally, you can test it within your Q&A portal. You can also test it within your web chat. So if I want to ask when is the bootcamp, let's see. So if so this, because this is now tied to the Q&A Maker endpoint, it is returning the value Jan 16, 2021. Yeah. So this is a bot that is based out of Q&A Maker that is published to Azure, and it is ready to go. You have a lot of other options here with regards to analytics and other sections as well. But this is an interesting area where you need to explore is the channel section. So like we discussed in the deck, there are a variety of channels that you can actually publish the bot to. So you can publish the bot to a web chat, you can publish the bot to any of these channels. Let's try Alexa. It's one of those recent channels that have been made available by the developer team. So if you look at Alexa, there's just one thing that it's expecting you to provide. It's expecting you to provide your Alexa skill ID. So let's try that. So if you're new to this, what you would need to do is create an Amazon developer account. So I'm logged into my Amazon developer console, and let me quickly create a skill here, my Alexa skill. This is fairly well documented within the Microsoft site. I can show you that. So this is the Microsoft documentation, and what we're going to do is we're just going to follow this exact same documentation here to how to connect your bot to Alexa, right? So let's go back. Okay, so I'm going to create a bot, and that's my skill name, and this is default language is English. I'm creating a custom model, and I will create my own backend resources. I will not use Alexa's for now, and I will create my skill. And then I would need to choose a template. I prefer to start from scratch. It's an easier way to do that. And then my skill will be created in a couple of seconds. Now, once that's done, just two small things that we need to edit, and we'll be ready. So if you remember in the web portal, one of the things that we had, one of the things that we had in the web portal was we had the Alexa service endpoint URI. So this is let's just copy this, and we would need this to configure our Alexa. So I'm going to go down here and go into endpoint, and I'm going to choose HTTPS. So this is, as I said, just following the exact documentation as it's available on the Microsoft site. I'm going to stop all those notifications. I'm going to select my SSL certificate type, and that's it. So I'm telling my Alexa skill what my bot's endpoint URI is, and I'm going to save the endpoint. So this is my first step. I will save the endpoints, and I make that available. Second thing I need to do is if I go down the interaction model, I will see a JSON editor here. Now in my JSON editor, I need to drop a JSON file. So this JSON file, I will just need to edit it. So for the sake of time, again, I have that ready already. And so I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to put it here. So, and I will just run you through what this is. So this is the model, basically. So this is the language model. I'm telling it that the name of my bot is CamBot. That's how you need to invoke my bot. And I am going to also say that there are a couple of example phrases that I have put in here. You can choose based on what your use case is. So I will save the model, and I will also build the model. So while my model is building, you can ignore the missing intents notification there. So while my model is building, just go back, and I want to take the skill ID, because that's essentially what my bot is looking for. So here, if you see, there's a copy skill ID link. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back to my Azure portal. There you go. So I'm going to paste this here. This is telling my bot that this is my Alexa skill. So that's it. Once that is configured, that's saved, that's ready. So that means my bot is now has an Alexa channel configured for the bot as well. So let's come back here and let's see if the build has succeeded. And yes, it looks like the build has completed. And within the developer console itself, there is an opportunity to test the bot. We can change this to development. So just like we tested within the web chat, we can test the bot within the developer console as well. You can use speech as well. I'm just using text for now. Alexa, ask CamBot, when is the bootcamp? Let's try this. Okay. Let's see if it responds. And great, so it's connected because it's connected to the Q&A maker, and it's surfaced in the Alexa channel, now we will have this. And this would be interesting if you do it using skill. And if you're very, very happy with this, please feel free to distribute your skills, and you can use your Azure Bot on your Alexa devices as well. Okay, so that's pretty neat. So one thing I would kind of call out here is that the beauty of the the beauty of the Azure Bot Service is the fact that you can use a single source code, and you can use that to connect it to multiple channels. I mean, to Alexa, to web chat, to Teams, Slack, Twitter. There's literally zero or minimal code changes that would be required to connect it to multiple channels. You don't have to write or change your source code to be able to connect it to all these different channels, which is the power of the platform. So let's go back to our slides, and let's see there. Okay, so that was the demo that I just showed you, the Q&A bot that was connected to Alexa. All right, so just for your curiosity, I will show you what another service also does. So we've seen how Q&A Maker works, right? So imagine the same thing, a person is asking for sessions on Chatbot. So they would ask that in 10 different ways, and the bot would need to understand all of that. And just a few technical terms here. The various variations are technically called utterances. And all these utterances are actually mapping to an intent, which is called the intention of the user. What exactly is the user trying to do here? And in our specific case, if you look at all those utterances, the intent of the user is just to find a session, right? Now, the challenge here is, if you have to go by Q&A, this sounds a little straightforward. You could write down Q&A pairs, but let's try this. Now, instead of a chatbot, the user could ask for session details on any topic, which means that you would need to identify and you would need to cater to different kinds of topics. So imagine if we had to create Q&A pairs for each of these topics, that would be very cumbersome. Instead, what we would do is we would extract that entity called topic, and we would keep it. So you'd use that as sort of like a variable in your variable expression in your entire phrase. Now, Q&A Maker may not be as sophisticated to handle this level of natural language understanding, but we have another service that can help us in this regard. So that is LUIS, Language Understanding Intelligence Service. So if you take a close look at the screen, you will see that there is a provision to provide the same kind of alternatives, utterances, but in LUIS you can actually extract the entities. So that's the power of LUIS. So just putting it all together, when we think about having an intelligent conversation with a bot, it might look very trivial on the outside. I mean, the user is asking for the question, and the bot needs to respond. So from a user's perspective, or from a bot's perspective, you need to understand the user's ask. And second, you should know what to respond. So understanding the user's ask, or the intent, to understand the intent, LUIS can help you with that. And to know what to respond, if you have detailed answers, Q&A Maker can sort of help you with that. And in fact, as we discussed before, there is a plethora of cognitive services that are available. If you want to proofread, you can use your Bing Spellcheck API to do content moderation, to do custom search APIs. You can provide voice support. You can do multilingual capabilities. You can understand the emotions of your customers. So capabilities are endless, in fact. Depending on your use case, you can choose which cognitive service you'd want to use. Now, we just actually scratched the surface. In fact, using the Azure Bot Service, Bot Framework, and cognitive services, you can build a virtual assistant. There's a virtual assistant bot framework that's available, which will help you, create these skills as well and use that. So there's a virtual assistant for La Liga. For all the La Liga fans, if you'd like to check this out on Google Assistant, the La Liga Google Assistant has been created using the Azure Bot Service in partnership with Microsoft. There's an interesting customer story on their website that you might want to check out. And as you can see, this is way beyond POCs and prototypes. Customers have been using this across the globe. We have a global clientele that's using this technology. So coming full circle, so this is what we have now. So you've seen how Azure Bot Service will help you plan, build, test, publish, connect, and evaluate. Excuse me. A last round on the topic of responsible AI. It's important that we talk about this, and irrespective of the amount of technology or technological advancement that's actually available for us, it's important that we, as responsible citizen developers, we create AI solutions that are fair, reliable, safe, private, secure, inclusive, and accountable. So these are the AI ethical principles that are also applicable for bot development efforts. And to put it in the words of Joel Spolsky, who's the CEO of Stack Overflow, the amount of responsibility on us has just increased, because every line of code now that we write as a developer, we are making decisions for ourselves, for our family, for our community. So let's be very, very cognizant of that. So great, thank you for joining us, and that brings us to the end of the session. I'm again completely happy to have hosted you here, and I have a few references that you can refer to if you need additional learning on that, and feel free to ask your questions in the chat window, and I would also encourage you to please tweet about the event, and there is a raffle draw that's happening that you can actually take part in for your participation in the event. There'll be a raffle draw at the end of the event that you can probably win. So thank you for your participation and for your cooperation. And we wish you a great day and a great evening. Thank you.